In the 5th chapter of the book of Judges, we encounter one of the most fascinating and complex figures in the Hebrew Bible, Deborah. She appears as a prophetess, a judge, and a military leader. Yet scholars have long wrestled with her portrayal, especially in chapter 5, where her tone is sharp, proud, and at times deeply unsettling. This video explores 2 key questions. First, why does Deborah's song in chapter 5 trouble so many scholars? And second, what does it mean to be a pre-monarchic prophet, and how does Deborah fit that role perfectly? The story of Deborah spans 2 chapters. Chapter 4 is a prose narrative. It tells the story of the battle against Sisera and the Canaanite army. Chapter 5 is a poem, an ancient song believed to celebrate the same victory. Together, they give us 2 very different windows into who Deborah was. The Song of Deborah in chapter 5 is considered one of the oldest pieces of poetry in the entire Hebrew Bible. Academic consensus places its origin in the northern region of ancient Israel, not only because of its language and literary style, which resembles ancient Ugaritic epic forms, but also because of the specific tribes it mentions and, just as tellingly, the tribes it leaves out. 6 tribes answered the call to battle. 4 did not. Dan and Asher stayed away, as did the tribes from the east side of the Jordan River. The song makes clear that this absence was not forgotten. The victory was national in scope, but the shame of those who stayed behind would be recorded in verse. Let us begin with the first question: why does Deborah's song in chapter 5 make so many scholars uncomfortable? The challenge is this: in chapter 5, Deborah comes across as bitter and proud. Academic readers who expect a spiritual leader to be humble and measured find themselves confronted with a very different kind of voice. Deborah's song is bold, self-referential, and at times, deeply harsh. 3 things in the song trouble academic readers most. First, Deborah appears to glorify herself. The song is written in the first person and draws sharp attention to her own importance. Second, she mocks the enemy, including a disturbing scene where she laughs at the image of Sisera's mother waiting at the window for a son who will never return. Third, she curses the tribes who did not come to fight, including the mysterious city of Meroz, condemned in the name of God. In the song itself, Deborah speaks directly in the first person. The line, "I, unto the Lord will I sing," strongly suggests that she is the primary voice of the poem. In verse 12, she even addresses herself by name: "Awake, awake, Deborah." For many readers, this feels less like worship and more like self-promotion. Perhaps the most striking moment in the song is the image of Sisera's mother. She stands at the window, waiting for her son to return. Deborah, or the poet, imagines her attendants reassuring her that he is simply dividing the spoils of war. The reader knows, of course, that Sisera is already dead. The poem lingers on this image. It is not compassion, it is mockery. In verse 23, a place called Meroz is cursed, condemned in the name of God for failing to come to the aid of Israel. Meroz itself is unknown to us today, but its people apparently refused the call to war. Academic discussion raises an interesting question: is this the voice of God speaking through the prophetess, or is this Deborah herself, using her divine authority to settle a score? The answer may be that there is no real difference. As God's representative, Deborah's word carried divine weight. Academic thought is divided on how to read the song. One view sees Deborah as a mother figure, stern but loving, using the song to correct her people and push them toward unity. The other view sees a poet who cannot resist emphasizing her own role, her position, and her importance. The song, on this reading, is an act of self-glorification as much as it is worship. When we look at the full picture, the taunting of absent tribes, the cursing of Meroz, the mockery of Sisera's mother, the praise of Jael for killing an enemy, it becomes hard to read chapter 5 as simply humble worship. Deborah in chapter 5 is proud, sharp, and unapologetically powerful. And that discomfort scholars feel? It may tell us more about our own expectations than about Deborah herself. Now let us turn to the second question: what does it mean to be a pre-monarchic prophet, and how does Deborah fulfill that role? Prophecy in ancient Israel was not simply about predicting the future. It was a social phenomenon. It emerged in times of crisis, when communities faced overwhelming fear and needed guidance. The ancient prophet was a human figure whose personal life was part of the story. Prophecy was not tied to a temple or a formal institution. It was personal, ecstatic, and visionary, and it belonged equally to men and women. Ancient prophets had very practical roles. They answered everyday questions, including something as ordinary as finding lost donkeys. They gave short, direct divine answers. And critically, they were the ones who anointed and appointed leaders, including kings and commanders. The prophet was the link between God and those who governed. The ancient prophet also fought against idolatry, maintaining the exclusive worship of God in Israel. Prophecy was connected to song, vision, and ecstatic experience. And crucially, the ancient prophet served as both judge and military leader. Before the monarchy existed, there was no separation between the prophet's spiritual authority and their political or military power. Put together, the pre-monarchic prophet was a remarkable figure, simultaneously a spiritual voice, a practical counselor, a judicial authority, a military leader, and a keeper of religious identity. No single modern category captures this role. It was all of these things at once. The clearest parallel to Deborah in the Hebrew Bible is Samuel. Academic consensus consistently draws this comparison. Both Samuel and Deborah held court and judged the people. Both delivered the direct word of God. Both were involved in commissioning military leaders. The parallel is striking, and it tells us that Deborah's role, far from being unusual for a prophet, fits a well-established pre-monarchic pattern. Chapter 4 introduces Deborah seated beneath her palm tree, where the people of Israel came to her for judgment. This is not an occasional role, it is her established office. The people came because they recognized her as a prophetess. Her judicial authority and her prophetic authority were inseparable. To sit in judgment was to exercise the word of God. When crisis came, Deborah acted. She summoned Barak and commanded him to lead the northern and central tribes against Sisera. Barak's response is telling, he refused to go without her. This is not the behavior of a man who sees himself as the true authority. Barak recognized that Deborah's presence was the sign to the people that God had commanded them to fight. Without her, there was no guarantee of victory. Deborah did not simply send Barak to war. Academic consensus attributes the strategy of the battle directly to her. It was Deborah who chose the timing of the attack. It was Deborah who knew how to take advantage of the flooding of the Kishon River to neutralize Sisera's iron chariots. She is not just a spiritual presence on the battlefield, she is the architect of the victory itself. What makes Deborah distinctive even among pre-monarchic prophets is this: unlike many judges in the book, she did not receive a divine call to begin her ministry. She was already a recognized spiritual authority before the crisis. She was a seer, one who held the direct word of God. And her influence was powerful enough to unite the fragmented tribes of Israel who had been drifting under Canaanite cultural pressure. After the victory, Deborah is given the title Mother in Israel. This is not a warm, domestic metaphor. It carries full weight: religious authority, cultic authority, judicial authority. To be a mother in Israel, in this context, is to be the central figure of the community. It is a title of governance, not sentiment. Reading both chapters together reveals something important. The Deborah of chapter 4, the measured judge who is reluctant to take on a military role, and the Deborah of chapter 5, who curses those who stayed home, are the same person. There is no contradiction. Both are expressions of the same pre-monarchic prophetic authority, the right to judge, to lead, and to hold Israel accountable. Some scholars have argued that Deborah's role is unusual because she is a woman leading in the Hebrew Bible. And there is truth in that. No other woman in the Old Testament holds this combination of judicial, prophetic, and military authority. But here is the key insight: it is not unusual for a pre-monarchic prophet to lead Israel in battle. Before the monarchy, that was the prophet's job. The fact that Deborah held this role tells us she was recognized as exactly that, a prophet in the fullest sense. When we examine the full picture, Deborah meets every characteristic of the pre-monarchic prophet. She judged Israel before and during crisis. She delivered the word of God. She commissioned a military commander. She was present on the battlefield. She composed and sang prophetic poetry. And she held the community accountable, through blessings, curses, and the authority of God's name. Deborah is difficult to categorize because she does not fit neatly into the roles we expect. She is not simply a fortune teller, not simply a judge, and not simply a warrior. She is all of these things, because in pre-monarchic Israel, the prophet was all of these things. Her anger, her pride, her authority, and her song are not problems to be explained away. They are the evidence of her office. Deborah is one of the most complete examples of an ancient Israelite prophet that the Hebrew Bible gives us.